The clang of the radiator woke Elena Carter just before her alarm did. She sighed, pulling herself upright and wrapping the tattered blanket tighter around her shoulders. Winter mornings in Queens were unforgiving, and the draft in her small apartment made her feel as though the cold seeped straight into her bones. On the kitchen counter sat the notice that had ruined her week, a court summons for an unpaid parking ticket. She glanced at the bold black print again as if staring at it long enough might make it disappear. Failure to remit payment of $200 by January 15 will result in mandatory court appearance. Elena ran a hand through her messy hair, her stomach churning. $200 wasn't just a number, it was food for Max. A portion of rent, or half the electricity bill. Missing work to appear in court mean. Mama? A small voice broke her thoughts. She turned to see her 8-year-old son, Max, standing in the hallway, rubbing sleep from his eyes. He clutched his favorite toy, a scruffy action figure missing an arm but loved all the same. Morning, baby, Elena said, forcing a smile. Get dressed, okay? We've got somewhere to be. Max frowned. Is it the doctor again? No, not this time. She paused, then added, it's just something mommy needs to take care of. Satisfied for now, Max shuffled off to get ready. Elena turned back to the notice, running her finger over the embossed court seal. She'd never been inside a courtroom before, and the thought of standing before a judge made her chest tighten. The Brooklyn courthouse loomed ahead, its gray stone exterior both imposing and unwelcoming. Elena clutched Max's hand as they climbed the steps, her heart racing. Inside, the ceilings were high, the air cold and sterile. Rows of wooden benches lined the room, and the sound of shoes echoed loudly against the polished floor. Max squeezed her hand. Mama, it's so big in here. I know, sweetie, just stay close to me. As they entered the courtroom, Elena's nerves worsened. She'd heard of Judge Leonard Harlow, stories of his stern rulings and his unflinching adherence to the letter of the law. People whispered that he never showed mercy, not even for minor offenses. The court clerk called for order, and everyone took their seats. Elena and Max sat on the hard bench, waiting for their case number to be called. Around her, people whispered nervously, some flipping through documents while others sat silently, staring ahead. Case number 342. Elena Carter. Her stomach dropped. She gripped Max's hand tighter as they approached the bench. The judge, a tall man with piercing gray eyes and a sharp jawline, barely glanced up as he flipped through the case file. You are charged with parking in a no-parking zone designated for emergency vehicles, he said, his voice cold and formal. How do you plead? Elena swallowed hard. I don't deny it, Your Honor. But, then why did you park there? His eyes finally met hers, unyielding as steel. Do you understand the importance of keeping those spaces clear? Yes, Your Honor. But my son. I didn't ask about your son, Ms. Carter. I asked about your actions. Before Elena could answer, a small voice cut through the courtroom like a knife. Mama, I'm hungry. The room froze. Every head turned toward Max, who was standing next to his mother, his wide brown eyes looking up at her innocently. Can we get pizza after this? The collective intake of breath was audible. Whispers broke out in the gallery, some stifling chuckles, others staring in disbelief. Elena's face burned with embarrassment. Max, she hissed, crouching down to his level. You can't just. Judge Harlow raised a hand, silencing the murmurs. For a moment, he simply stared at Max, his expression unreadable. The room fell silent again, the tension so thick it was almost suffocating. Finally, the judge spoke, his tone unexpectedly soft. Young man, did you just ask for pizza? Max nodded earnestly. Yeah, Mama says we can't get it a lot 'cause it costs too much. But maybe today we can? A ripple of laughter spread through the courtroom. Even the bailiff smirked. Elena wished the floor would swallow her whole. She stammered, Your Honor, I'm so sorry. He doesn't. Quiet, Ms. Carter, Judge Harlow said, holding up a hand. His gaze shifted back to Max. Tell me, what's your favorite kind of pizza? Cheese, Max said brightly. Mama likes mushrooms, but I don't. The judge leaned back in his chair, his lips twitching as if suppressing a smile. The courtroom watched in stunned silence, waiting for what would happen next. Judge Harlow cleared his throat, his sharp features softening ever so slightly. Ms. Carter, step forward. Elena obeyed, her knees trembling. She felt Max's hand slip into hers. A small gesture of reassurance from her son. "Do you work, Ms. Carter?" "Yes, Your Honor," she said quickly. "I work 2 jobs. One at a bakery and another as a server." "And this ticket, why didn't you pay it?" "I couldn't afford it," she admitted, her voice barely above a whisper. "I parked there because my son was having an asthma attack. And I didn't know what else to do." The judge nodded slowly, tapping his pen against the desk. "You have a clean record. No prior infractions. Is that correct?" "Yes, Your Honor." He leaned forward, his gray eyes piercing yet no longer cold. "Given the circumstances and your record, I'm dismissing the ticket." The courtroom erupted into murmurs. Elena's eyes widened, tears welling up as she stammered. "Thank you, Your Honor. I don't know what to say." Judge Harlow wasn't finished. "Bailiff, bring Ms. Carter the resource packet." A folder was handed to Elena. Inside, you'll find information on local child care support, financial aid programs, and a free online degree platform. I suggest you take advantage of these resources to improve your situation. Elena clutched the folder, her hands trembling. "Thank you," she whispered, her voice thick with emotion. "Thank you so much." Max tugged at her sleeve. "Mama, can we still get pizza?" The courtroom burst into laughter. Even Judge Harlow allowed himself a faint smile. "Go get your pizza," he said, dismissing the case. Court is adjourned. The chill of the January air hit Elena as she stepped out of the courthouse. Her breath visible in the cold. She clutched the resource packet tightly in one hand and Max's hand in the other. Her mind spinning, the surreal events of the courtroom replayed in her head, Judge Harlow's unexpected kindness, Max's innocent yet pivotal interruption, and the overwhelming relief of having the fine dismissed. "Mommy, can we get pizza now?" Max asked, looking up at her with a hopeful grin. Elena laughed softly, shaking her head. "You don't give up, do you?" Max puffed out his chest. "You said I should never give up. Like when I'm trying to finish my puzzles." She knelt down to his level, her eyes glistening with unshed tears. "You're right, Max, and you know what? I think today, you've earned that pizza." Max's cheer echoed down the street, drawing a few amused glances from passers-by. For once, Elena didn't care about the stares. She had walked into the courthouse feeling defeated. But now, with the dismissal of the fine and a folder full of possibilities, a new feeling took its place, hope. Later that evening, after Max had fallen asleep in his room, Elena sat at the kitchen table with the folder spread open before her. The apartment was silent except for the distant hum of traffic outside. The papers detailed programs she hadn't known existed: subsidized childcare, job training initiatives, and even an online degree program that offered flexible courses for single parents. It all sounded too good to be true. Her fingers lingered on the brochure for the degree program. The glossy images showed smiling students, diverse in age and background, a future within reach. The tagline read. Elena's throat tightened. She'd always dreamed of going back to school, but life had taken her down a different path. Her parents had died when she was young, and raising Max on her own had left little room for anything else. But now, she glanced toward Max's room, where she could hear his soft, steady breathing. If she could create a better future for him, wasn't it worth trying? The next day, after her morning shift at the bakery, Elena made her first call to the number listed on the degree program brochure. Her hands shook as she held the phone, but the cheerful voice on the other end immediately put her at ease. "Welcome to Bright Futures Learning. How can I help you today?" I'm interested in enrolling," Elena said, her voice hesitant. "I'm a single mom, and I've never done online classes before." "But, that's wonderful," the woman interrupted, her enthusiasm palpable. "We specialize in helping parents like you. Let's start by finding a program that fits your schedule." An hour later, Elena had registered for her first class, Introduction to Business. She hung up the phone and stared at the confirmation email in her inbox. She hadn't felt this excited or nervous in years. Meanwhile, back in his chambers, Judge Leonard Harlow sat at his desk, staring at the case file marked Carter. Elena, the woman, and her son had left an impression he couldn't shake. Over his long career, he had seen countless defendants plead for leniency. But there was something different about Elena, a quiet determination, a refusal to crumble under the weight of her circumstances. And then there was Max. The boy's simple honesty had broken through the hardened shell Leonard had built around himself. It wasn't often that someone, let alone a child, challenged his perspective so directly. He leaned back in his chair, a rare smile crossing his face. Maybe he had been too rigid over the years, too focused on rules and not enough on the people behind them. He resolved to keep an eye on Elena's progress, curious to see where this second chance might lead. Over the next few weeks, Elena's life became a whirlwind. Between her bakery job, her evening shifts at the restaurant, and her new online classes, her days were packed to the brim. Max was curious about her schoolwork, often sitting next to her at the kitchen table as she completed assignments. "What's this, Mommy?" he asked one night, pointing to her laptop screen. "That's a business plan," she explained, smiling. "I have to think about how I'd start my own bakery someday." "Can I help?" Elena laughed, ruffling his hair. "You already do. You're my biggest cheerleader." Despite the long hours and sleepless nights, Elena felt something she hadn't in years, a sense of purpose. Every completed assignment brought her one step closer to her goal. One evening, as Elena was serving tables at the restaurant, a familiar face walked through the door, Judge Harlow. He was with a group of colleagues, his expression as stern as ever. Elena froze, unsure whether to approach him. But then their eyes met, and to her surprise, he gave her a small nod of recognition. She quickly returned to her work, her mind racing. What was he doing here? Did he remember her? As the group was finishing their meal, Judge Harlow stopped her on his way out. "Ms. Carter," he said, his tone formal but not unkind. "How are the classes going?" Elena blinked, caught off guard. "Oh, they're going well, Your Honor. Thank you for asking." "Good," he said with a slight smile. "I expect great things." With that, he walked out, leaving Elena stunned. For the first time, she realized that someone, beyond Max, believed in her. And that belief was enough to push her forward. The weeks turned into months, and Elena settled into a rhythm. The demands of her jobs and coursework were exhausting, but the knowledge that she was working towards something better kept her motivated. Max, too, seemed to thrive in their new routine. He often helped Elena study, quizzing her on terms from her business class or doodling pictures of a bakery with her nom. One evening, after a particularly long shift at the bakery, Elena received an email from her professor. It wasn't just feedback on her latest assignment, it was praise. "Elena, your proposed bakery plan demonstrates excellent foresight and creativity. If this were a real business, I'd invest in it. Keep up the good work." Elena stared at the words, tears pooling in her eyes. She had always doubted her ability to succeed in something as monumental as running her own business. But here was someone, a professional, telling her she could do it. Meanwhile, Judge Harlow found himself thinking about Elena and Max more often than he expected. As someone who had spent decades focusing on strict enforcement of the law, his newfound interest in their progress was uncharacteristic and unsettling. Late one evening, as he reviewed case files in his quiet chambers, he pulled out a copy of Elena's dismissed case. He flipped through the notes, pausing on the mention of her resource packet. A small smile tugged at the corner of his mouth as he imagined Max's candid request for pizza. Harlow had never been the kind of man to intervene in someone's life beyond the courtroom. But this case felt different. It wasn't pity that drove his curiosity, it was admiration. He saw potential in Elena, a determination to rise above her circumstances. Maybe, he thought, justice isn't just about the letter of the law. Maybe it's also about the spirit. Elena's first big break came unexpectedly. During a class discussion, her professor mentioned a local entrepreneurship competition offering grants to small business hopefuls. The winner would receive $10 in startup funds. The idea of entering terrified her. She didn't feel ready, not with her hectic schedule and lack of experience. But Max's voice echoed in her mind. "You said I should never give up." Taking a deep breath, she registered for the competition. Over the next few weeks, Elena poured every spare moment into perfecting her pitch. She stayed up late researching market trends, sketching designs for her bakery's logo, and practicing her presentation in front of Max. "Welcome to Max's Mama Bakery," Max announced dramatically one evening, mimicking the introductions he'd seen on TV. Elena burst into laughter, pulling him into a hug. The day of the competition arrived. and Elena stood backstage clutching her note cards. Her heart pounding. She was up against seasoned professionals, many of whom had far more experience than she did. But as she glanced at Max, sitting proudly in the audience with his action figure in hand, she felt a surge of courage. When it was her turn, Elena stepped onto the stage, her hands trembling. She took a deep breath and began. "Good afternoon. My name is Elena Carter, and I'm here to present my dream. A bakery that's not just about pastries, but about building community." She spoke about her vision for affordable, high-quality baked goods, about creating a space where families could gather, and about her inspiration, her son, Max. By the time she finished, the room erupted into applause. As Elena left the stage, a familiar face approached her. "Judge Harlow. You did well, Ms. Carter," he said, his tone warm. "Your Honor?" Elena stammered, shocked to see him. "What are you doing here?" "I volunteer with this organization," he explained, "and I've been keeping an eye on your progress. It seems you're proving me right." Elena flushed, a mixture of pride and disbelief washing over her. "Thank you. I didn't know you were watching." Judge Harlow nodded. "I believe in second chances, Ms. Carter, but it's up to you to make the most of them. And you're doing just that." Elena didn't win first place, but she didn't leave empty-handed. The judges awarded her the Emerging Entrepreneur grant, a $5 prize meant to support promising startups. It wasn't the grand prize, but to Elena, it felt like a miracle. Max cheered louder than anyone else when her name was called. As she walked off the stage, clutching the check, she felt a new sense of confidence. This was the first step toward her dream. Word of Elena's journey began to spread. The local paper ran a feature on her, highlighting her determination and the judge's pivotal role in giving her a second chance. Customers at the bakery started asking about her plans, offering words of encouragement and even donations. Meanwhile, Judge Harlow found himself re-evaluating his approach to justice. He began incorporating more restorative practices into his rulings, focusing on rehabilitation rather than punishment whenever possible. Months later, Elena stood in the empty space that would soon become her bakery. The walls were bare, and the floors were scuffed. But to her, it was perfect. Max ran around excitedly, pointing out where the display cases should go. "Mama, can we have cookies shaped like dinosaurs?" he asked. Elena laughed. "Anything you want, kiddo." The bakery's grand opening was a small but joyous affair. Friends, neighbors, and even Judge Harlow attended. As Elena cut the ribbon, she caught the judge's eye and mouthed, "Thank you." He nodded, his expression soft. For the first time in years, he felt truly proud, not of a ruling or a career milestone, but of the difference he had made in someone's life. Years later, Max would tell the story of how his mother's determination and a judge's unexpected kindness changed their lives. And every time he did, he would end it the same way, with a smile and the words, "And it all started with pizza." Months passed, and Max's Mama Bakery became a beloved spot in the neighborhood. The smell of freshly baked bread and pastries filled the air each morning as Elena worked tirelessly to perfect her recipes. Customers often commented on the warm atmosphere, and many returned just to chat with Max, who loved helping behind the counter after school. "Try the chocolate croissants," Max would say confidently, pointing to the display case. "My mom makes them the best." Elena would laugh from behind the counter, feeling a mixture of pride and gratitude. The bakery was more than a business, it was a second chance. A testament to all the hard work and sacrifices she had made. But it wasn't just Elena who changed. Judge Harlow, now a frequent customer, often stopped by for coffee and a scone, quietly observing the lively community that had formed around the bakery. One brisk autumn afternoon, Elena was kneading dough when a familiar face walked through the door. It was Mrs. Gutierrez, an elderly woman who had once been her regular at the restaurant where Elena used to work. "Elena, is that you?" Mrs. Gutierrez exclaimed, her face lighting up. "I saw the article about your bakery, but I had to see it for myself." "It's me," Elena said, wiping her hands on her apron and giving Mrs. Gutierrez a warm hug. "It's been a long time." The two women caught up while Max brought Mrs. Gutierrez a sample of cookies. "You've built something wonderful here," Mrs. Gutierrez said, her voice thick with emotion. "You deserve this." Elena's chest swelled with pride. Seeing familiar faces from her past reminded her of how far she had come. As the bakery thrived, Elena began to think about expanding. She wanted to add a seating area, a place where families could gather and enjoy their treats in comfort. But the costs were daunting, and the thought of taking out a loan filled her with anxiety. One evening, as she closed up shop, Judge Harlow walked in for his usual order. Elena hesitated before speaking. "Your Honor," she began, "can I ask for your advice?" He raised an eyebrow. Intrigued. "Of course." She explained her idea for expanding the bakery and her concerns about financing. The judge listened carefully, nodding as she spoke. "Elena," he said after a moment, "your community believes in you. If you present this idea as you did at that competition, I think you'll find more support than you expect." His words gave her the courage to move forward. With his advice in mind, Elena decided to host a fundraiser to gather support for her dream. The fundraiser was a whirlwind of activity. Customers donated baked goods, neighbors volunteered to set up tables, and Max created hand-drawn flyers to advertise the event. The bakery was packed with people eager to support Elena's vision. Judge Harlow arrived halfway through, quietly slipping a donation into the collection jar before taking his usual seat by the window. He watched as Elena addressed the crowd, her confidence shining brighter than ever. "Thank you all for believing in me," she said, her voice steady. "This bakery is more than just a business. It's proof that no matter how tough life gets, there's always a way forward if we help each other." The crowd erupted into applause. By the end of the evening, Elena had raised enough money to begin the expansion. The renovation took weeks, but when it was finished, the bakery's transformation was remarkable. The new seating area was cozy and inviting, with large windows that let in plenty of sunlight. Elena's customers often lingered, chatting over coffee and pastries. Elena also began offering workshops, teaching kids how to bake cookies and parents how to make bread from scratch. Max became her unofficial assistant, proudly demonstrating techniques he had learned from his mother. The bakery wasn't just a business anymore, it was a hub of connection and joy. As Elena flourished, Judge Harlow found himself reflecting on his role in her journey. Over the years, he had presided over countless cases, many of which involved people like Elena, struggling, overwhelmed, but full of potential. Her success had opened his eyes to the importance of compassion in the justice system. Inspired, Harlow began advocating for programs that supported restorative justice. He worked to establish partnerships between the courts and community organizations, ensuring that more people like Elena had access to resources and second chances. With her bakery thriving, Elena felt compelled to pay forward the kindness she had received. She started a mentorship program, teaching other single parents the basics of starting a business. She also partnered with local charities to provide free meals for families in need during the holidays. "Kindness is what got me here," she often told Max. "It's only right that we share it with others." Max, now 10, took these lessons to heart. He often suggested ways the bakery could help, from donating leftover bread to organizing bake sales for local schools. 2 years after the bakery's opening, Elena received a letter inviting her to speak at a local event honoring Judge Harlow for his contributions to restorative justice. She was nervous but knew she couldn't pass up the chance to thank him publicly. At the event, Elena stood before the crowd, her voice steady despite the lump in her throat. "Judge Harlow gave me more than a second chance," she said. "He reminded me that justice isn't just about rules, it's about seeing people for who they are and what they can become. Because of his kindness, my son and I have a future we never thought possible." The audience erupted into applause, and Judge Harlow, sitting in the front row, offered her a rare but genuine smile. As the years went by, Elena's bakery continued to thrive. Max grew into a confident young man, often reminiscing about the day his innocent request for pizza changed everything. One sunny afternoon, as Elena closed up shop, she noticed a new family peering into the bakery's window. The mother looked frazzled, much like Elena had once felt. Without hesitation, Elena opened the door and welcomed them inside. "Everyone deserves a little kindness," she said, offering the child a free cookie. "And sometimes, a cookie is just the start." Elena's journey became a story told throughout the community, a testament to the power of resilience, generosity, and second chances. Her bakery remained a cornerstone of the neighborhood, a place where people found not only pastries but also connection and hope. As for Judge Harlow, His legacy grew alongside Elena's. His reforms inspired other judges to adopt more compassionate approaches, ensuring that the justice system served not just as a tool for punishment, but as a means of uplifting those in need. And though their paths rarely crossed in later years, Elena and Judge Harlow remained connected by the ripple effects of their shared story, a reminder that even the smallest acts of kindness could change lives in ways no one could predict. Years later, Elena stood in her bakery, watching Max, now a teenager, confidently manage the morning rush. His charm and quick wit made him a favorite among the regulars. Watching him greet customers with a smile, she couldn't help but marvel at how far they had come. "Mom, can you help me with the new cookie display?" Max called from behind the counter. "On it," Elena replied, tying her apron. The bakery had grown not just in size but in reputation. People traveled from across the city to visit Max's Mama Bakery, drawn by both the pastries and the story of resilience behind it. Elena had even started mentoring young aspiring bakers, many of whom saw her as a role model. One quiet afternoon, while Elena was experimenting with a new recipe, the doorbell jingled. She looked up to see an older man walking in. His once imposing presence softened with age. "Judge Harlow?" she said, setting down her mixing spoon. He nodded, a faint smile on his lips. "It's been a while, Ms. Carter." "It's Elena," she said warmly, coming out from behind the counter. "And welcome back. How have you been?" They sat at a small table by the window, sipping coffee and catching up. Judge Harlow shared stories of his retirement, how he'd spent his time writing about justice reform and mentoring young judges. "And you?" he asked. "The bakery looks incredible." Elena beamed. "It's been a journey, but I wouldn't trade it for anything. Max is thriving, and this place has become more than I ever dreamed." As they talked, Max approached the table, holding a tray of freshly baked cookies. "Hi, I'm Max," he said, extending his hand. Judge Harlow shook it, his eyes twinkling. "I remember you. You're the one who asked for pizza in my courtroom." Max grinned sheepishly. "Yeah, I guess I made an impression." "You did," the judge said, his tone warm. "And it's good to see you've carried that boldness into everything you do." After the visit, Judge Harlow left Elena with an idea that stayed with her for weeks. He had suggested she write her story, not just about the bakery, but about her journey from struggling single mother to successful entrepreneur. "You have a voice, Elena," he'd said, "and people need to hear it." Encouraged by his words, Elena began drafting her memoir. Late at night, after the bakery closed, she'd sit at the kitchen table, her pen moving across the pages as she poured her heart into the story. It wasn't just about her, it was about hope, resilience, and the unexpected kindness that had changed her life. A year later, Elena's book, From Dough to Dreams, A Mother's Journey, was published. The launch event was held at the bakery, and the turnout exceeded her wildest expectations. Friends, neighbors, and even strangers who had been inspired by her story came to celebrate. Judge Harlow attended as well, standing quietly at the back of the room with a proud smile. When it was time for Elena to speak, she spotted him in the crowd and felt a swell of gratitude. "I owe so much to the people who believed in me," she said, her voice steady. "Sometimes, all it takes is one act of kindness to change a life. And I hope this book inspires others to give that kindness, to see the potential in people and help them realize it." The room erupted into applause. As she stepped off the stage, Judge Harlow approached her. "Well done," he said simply. Elena hugged him, something she'd never thought she'd do all those years ago. "Thank you for everything." The success of her book brought new opportunities. Elena began speaking at schools, community centers, and conferences, sharing her story and encouraging others to pursue their dreams despite adversity. She also used the book's proceeds to expand her mentorship program, helping more single parents and struggling individuals gain skills and confidence. Max, now preparing for college, took on a larger role at the bakery. He planned to study business, inspired by his mother's journey. One day, he told Elena, "I'm going to open another bakery, maybe a whole chain." Elena laughed, her heart swelling with pride. "Just remember to keep the cookies shaped like dinosaurs." One crisp autumn morning, Elena received news that Judge Harlow had passed away peacefully in his sleep. The funeral was attended by hundreds, a testament to the lives he had touched both in and out of the courtroom. At the service, Elena spoke briefly, her voice trembling with emotion. Judge Harlow didn't just give me a second chance, he taught me the value of seeing people for who they could become. Not just who they were in their worst moments. His kindness set off a ripple effect, one that continues to touch lives. I am forever grateful. Afterward, she visited the small bench that had been dedicated to him outside the courthouse. On it was inscribed, "Justice is not just about punishment, it's about hope." Elena sat on the bench, her thoughts filled with memories of the man who had believed in her when she didn't believe in herself. Years later, Elena stood in her bakery, now a thriving franchise with locations across the city. Max, a young entrepreneur in his own right, had taken over much of the business, freeing her to focus on her mentorship programs and writing. One day, a young woman walked into the bakery, clutching a worn envelope. She looked nervous, much like Elena had once felt. "Hi," the woman said hesitantly. "I heard about your story. And I was wondering if you could give me some advice. I'm trying to start something of my own, but I don't know where to begin." Elena smiled, gesturing to a chair. "Let's talk." As they spoke, Elena felt the familiar warmth of purpose filling her heart. She knew that the legacy of kindness Judge Harlow had sparked would continue through her, and through everyone she helped along the way. Max Carter stood in the middle of Max's Mama Bakery, now the flagship store of a chain spanning several boroughs. At 22, Max had already made a name for himself as a rising entrepreneur. He wasn't just running the business, he was innovating it. His latest idea? A mobile bakery van, bringing fresh pastries to underserved neighborhoods. "Mom, I think this could be huge," Max said, pacing the kitchen as Elena watched him with a proud smile. "You've always thought big," she replied, sipping her tea, "and you've always made it happen." Max grinned. "You taught me that." Despite his success, Max never lost sight of the lessons his mother had instilled in him. Each mobile bakery van would include a pay what you can day once a week, ensuring everyone had access to their treats regardless of income. Elena's mentorship program had grown into a full-fledged nonprofit organization called Second Chances Initiative. The program provided resources, training, and financial assistance to single parents and individuals re-entering the workforce. One of Elena's mentees, a young mother named Clara, had recently opened her own cafe in Queens. At the cafe's grand opening, Clara spoke about how Elena's support had transformed her life. "She didn't just show me how to build a business," Clara said, her voice thick with emotion. "She showed me how to believe in myself again." Standing in the crowd, Elena wiped away a tear. Seeing Clara succeed reminded her of her own journey and reinforced her mission to keep paying kindness forward. On a crisp spring morning, Elena found herself standing outside the courthouse where it had all begun. She hadn't been back in years, but today was special. She had been invited to speak at a panel on restorative justice, an event honoring the late Judge Harlow's contributions. Inside, the courtroom looked the same, imposing and cold. Yet now it held a warmth of nostalgia for Elena. When it was her turn to speak, she approached the podium, taking a deep breath. "This room once terrified me," she began. "I stood here as a single mother, overwhelmed and unsure of my future. But Judge Harlow didn't see me as just another case file. He saw my potential. He believed in me when I didn't believe in myself." She paused, scanning the faces of the audience, many of them judges and legal professionals. "That belief didn't just change my life, it created a ripple effect. Because of his kindness, I've been able to help others. And they've gone on to help even more. That's the power of seeing people not for their mistakes, but for what they can become." The applause was thunderous. After the event, several attendees approached Elena, inspired by her words. Max's mobile bakery van was an instant success. He named it Sweet Wheels and personally oversaw the first route. Driving through neighborhoods that lacked access to fresh food, Max handed out pastries with a smile, sometimes staying to chat with customers about their lives. One day, an elderly woman named Mrs. Harris approached the van with a shy smile. "I haven't had fresh bread in weeks," she said, holding up a crumpled dollar bill. Max handed her a loaf and refused the money. "This one's on me." Word spread quickly, and soon Sweet Wheels wasn't just a bakery, it was a beacon of hope in struggling communities. Max's efforts earned him recognition, and a local news outlet featured him as a young leader making a difference. Despite her growing success, Elena faced a new challenge. scaling her nonprofit to meet increasing demand. More people were seeking help than she could currently support, and funding was stretched thin. One night, as she reviewed grant applications at her kitchen table, Max joined her, setting down 2 cups of coffee. "Mom, why don't we do a fundraiser?" he suggested. Elena sighed. "We've done so many already. I don't want to keep asking people for money." Max leaned forward. "Then don't ask for donations. Show them what we're doing. Let's host an open house at the bakery. Showcase the stories of people you've helped. People need to see the impact." Inspired, Elena began planning the event. They called it From Flower to Futures, a celebration of resilience and transformation. Clara, along with several other mentees, agreed to share their stories at the event. The bakery's open house was packed. Guests enjoyed pastries and coffee while watching video testimonials from people whose lives had been changed by Elena's nonprofit. Clara spoke movingly about how she had gone from struggling to make ends meet to owning her own cafe. Another mentee, a father of 3, shared how he'd used the program to secure a stable job. When it was Elena's turn to speak, she held up a small piece of paper, the court summons that had brought her to Judge Harlow years ago. "This was the start of my journey," she said. "What felt like the worst day of my life became the moment that changed everything. And it happened because one person chose to see me as more than my mistakes." The event raised enough funds to expand Second Chance's initiative, allowing Elena to help even more families. Years later, Max stood on stage at a university, delivering a speech as the keynote speaker for a business leadership conference. Now 30, he had grown Sweet Wheels into a fleet of mobile bakeries, each dedicated to serving underserved communities. "My mom taught me that business isn't just about profits, it's about people," he said. "It's about building something that makes the world a little kinder, a little brighter." In the audience, Elena watched with tears in her eyes. Max had become everything she had hoped for, and more. As Elena approached her 60th birthday, she reflected on her life's journey. The bakery was thriving, her nonprofit had helped thousands, and Max was continuing to build on their family's legacy. One day, as she sat in her bakery's sunny seating area, a young girl approached her with a nervous smile. "Hi, Ms. Carter," the girl said. "My name is Sophia, and I was wondering if you're still taking mentees. I want to start my own bakery someday." Elena's heart swelled. "Of course, Sophia, let's sit down and talk." As they began to chat, Elena felt a familiar sense of purpose. Her story wasn't just hers anymore, it was a thread woven into the lives of countless others, proving that kindness could echo across generations. Elena Carter had become more than a local success story, she was now a national advocate for second chances. Invitations to speak at conferences, universities, and even government events poured in, each giving her a platform to share her journey and the mission of Second Chance's initiative. One day, as she reviewed her packed schedule, an email caught her eye. It was an invitation to appear on a major television program to discuss her work and the impact of restorative justice. "Mom, this is huge," Max exclaimed when she showed him. "Millions of people are going to hear your story." Elena hesitated. Public speaking still made her nervous. But she knew this was an opportunity to reach people who needed hope, and those in positions to create change. On the day of the show, Elena sat in the green room, her palms sweaty. She had rehearsed her points countless times, but the gravity of the moment felt overwhelming. Max was by her side, giving her a reassuring smile. "You've got this, Mom," he said. "Just be yourself." When the host introduced her, the audience erupted into applause. As Elena took her seat on stage, she felt a calm determination settle over her. The host began by asking about her early struggles and the pivotal moment in the courtroom with Judge Harlow. "What would you say to people who think the justice system shouldn't be about second chances?" the host asked. Elena took a deep breath. "I'd say that justice isn't just about punishment, it's about possibility. It's about recognizing that people are more than their mistakes. Judge Harlow gave me a second chance. And because of that, I've been able to help others. Imagine the ripple effect if more people were given that opportunity." The segment ended with a standing ovation. As Elena walked backstage, producers approached her with ideas for collaborations, including a documentary about her life and work. The publicity from the television appearance brought a wave of new donors and volunteers to Second Chance's initiative. With the increased resources, Elena expanded the program nationwide, partnering with local organizations to create hubs in major cities. Max, now overseeing operations for Sweet Wheels, suggested integrating the bakery vans into the initiative. We could use them to deliver meals to families in need. He proposed. It's a natural extension of what we're already doing. The idea was a success. The vans, now branded with the Second Chances logo, became symbols of hope, delivering not just food but information about local resources and programs. As Elena's influence grew, she began mentoring not just individuals but entire communities. She worked with schools to implement life skills programs, ensuring that young people had the tools they needed to succeed. One school, in particular, held a special place in her heart: the elementary school Max had attended. She partnered with them to create a baking workshop, where students could learn about entrepreneurship and teamwork. At the first session, a young boy named Aaron approached her. "Ms. Carter, do you think I could run a bakery someday?" Elena knelt down to his level, her eyes sparkling. "I don't just think so, I know so. And I'll be here to help you every step of the way." By the time Elena turned 65, Second Chances Initiative had become an international organization, helping thousands of families each year. She traveled to countries around the world, sharing her story and working with leaders to develop programs inspired by her model. At a summit on restorative justice in Geneva, she delivered the keynote address. Standing before an audience of world leaders, Elena spoke about the day her life had changed forever. "It started with a single act of kindness," she said, "a judge who chose to see me as more than my mistakes. That kindness didn't just change my life, it created a ripple effect that continues to this day." Imagine what we could achieve if every person, every system, embraced that same belief. The room erupted into applause. But Elena's thoughts were on the lives yet to be touched, the stories yet to be written. After years of travel, Elena returned to her roots, settling back in the neighborhood where it had all begun. The flagship bakery was still thriving, now run by Max and his team. Elena often visited, spending her mornings chatting with regulars and helping in the kitchen. One day, as she was icing a cake, a young woman walked in with a baby on her hip. Elena recognized her immediately. It was Clara, one of her first mentees. "Elena," Clara said, beaming, "I wanted to introduce you to someone. This is Ella." Elena's heart swelled as she held the baby, marveling at how the cycle of kindness continued to grow. In her later years, Elena focused on writing and reflection. Her second book, The Ripple Effect, became a bestseller, chronicling the stories of those who had been impacted by Second Chances Initiative. The book's proceeds went entirely to the nonprofit, ensuring its work would continue for generations. One evening, as the sun set over the city, Elena sat on the bench dedicated to Judge Harlow outside the courthouse. She traced the words engraved there. "Justice is not just about punishment, it's about hope." A young couple walked by, their child running ahead to the bakery. Elena smiled, knowing that her story, and the judge's kindness, had become part of something much larger. Years later, after Elena's passing, Max organized a memorial in her honor. People from all walks of life attended, each with a story of how she had touched their lives. As Max stood to speak, he looked out at the crowd, his voice steady despite the emotion in his chest. "My mom taught me that kindness isn't just a gesture, it's a responsibility." She believed in people, even when they didn't believe in themselves. And because of that, she changed the world. The crowd rose in applause, a fitting tribute to a woman whose life had been a testament to the power of second chances.